going around the world for the International Youth Conference 10. Who is ready for the summary with the discussion? Raise your hand. And please feel free to use the various reactions to share your thoughts throughout the duration of the section. So thank you very much once again to the International Youth Conference Organizing Committee for hosting the 10th edition of the International Youth Conference, IRC for short. My name is Aisha Madeva, and I will be serving as your moderator for our next session, which is the role of youth in multilateral diplomacy, strengthening meaningful youth participation at the international level. So with that being said, I kindly like to ask our esteemed panelists to join us on stage for the dialogue. Let's give a round of applause for our panelists.
Yes.
All right, so thank you very much once again to our esteemed panelists for joining today's dialogue. Now, as we know, multilateralism, according to the United Nations, is a form of cooperation between at least 3 states. It involves a shared system of values and is also based on the founding principles of consultation, inclusion, and solidarity. Many of themes as we have expressed throughout the conference so far. Multilateralism includes various actors, including governments, civil society, and academia to achieve a common goal. The United Nations Charter incorporates the notion of multilateralism. Furthermore, the United Nations Department of Global Communications Civil Society Conference, also known as the DGC Department of Global Communications, in 2018, focused on the theme people-centered multilateralism, which is the essence, of course, of our discussion today. And of course, again, recognize the convergence of various actors to advance the sustainable development goals, as many of you know, which is a part of the United Nations 2030 Development Agenda. And as we know, the United Nations Summit of the Future was just held on September 21st through the 22nd, with the action days preceding it, and emphasized the paramount importance of global cooperation as a catalyst in finding solutions to the challenges that face the international community. Youth serve as a paramount actor in multilateralism with their optimism and expertise for a better world. Youth have been involved in intergovernmental negotiations and dialogues in various international fora. The panelists joining today's dialogue will share their perspectives on youth engagement at the international level from various fields. So with that being said, I'd like to pass the floor to our first panelist. Each panelist will be sharing their thoughts and on their insights and experiences in youth engagement and participation. Without further ado, I'd first like to pass it to Nagma Shrestha, who is a representative to the United Nations for the International Association of Youth and Students for Peace. Nagma, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much, Aishu. And namaste, distinguished delegates and youths from all around the world. It's great to see you all amazing youth gathered here. I was trying to get the number of youth participation today. I believe 183 countries. Hopefully, let's give a cheer for all of that. I am Nagma Shrestha from Nepal. working as a representative to the United Nations for International Association of Youth and Students for Peace, IAYSP. We are a youth-led NGO working to empower youth and students to become global citizens through character education and peace projects that support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Margaret Mead, American anthropologist, once said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." It's a pleasure to welcome and meet such thoughtful and passionate leaders from around the world gathered here in pursuit of knowledge, trust, collaboration, and companionship for peace and sustainable development. Globally, youth today face a challenge that many of us don't talk about often enough. They feel like they don't have the right to dream. With crises like climate change and conflict, millions of young people struggle not only with external barriers, but also with the belief that their dreams don't matter. A report from the ILO states that a staggering 73 million young people are unemployed. And UNESCO reports that over 258 million children and youth are out of school. How can they imagine a future when opportunities seem so far out of reach? Though my story cannot be generalized, coming from Nepal, I understand the added layers of challenges we face. Limited resources, fewer opportunities, and often the global stage feels so distant. I too always didn't think that I would be here today. At several points in my journey, I lost track of what I wanted. The pressures of life, the uncertainty of future, it all weighed heavily. But I believe youth is the perfect synonym for resilience and potential. The question we must ask is how we can ensure that young people, especially in the most vulnerable regions, can dream again, and that they have the tools and support to turn those dreams into realities. We are more connected today than ever before. The internet is no longer a luxury for a few. It is increasingly being advocated as a fundamental human right. This global connectivity has opened doors for conversations, collaboration, and action that were once unimaginable. While connectivity brings opportunities, it also presents challenges. Social media influences how we see ourselves and others, often leading to constant comparisons and pressure to fit in. Instead of fostering connection and learning, it can leave us feeling anxious and trapped in a cycle of distraction. As young people, we often see news of war, conflict, and instability, which can make the future seem overwhelming. But we also have the power to witness and share stories of resilience and hope. The internet offers us the chance to build global movements, connect across borders, and focus on solutions. It's up to us to choose how we use these tools to shift away from the distractions and focus on building the future we want to see. I come from Nepal, a spiritually abundant nation still affected by patriarchal norms. Despite women making up to 51% of the population and only 22% participate in formal employment, as a young woman, I know the struggle to stand out, but we push forward, determined to shine. The same determination is needed for youth in multilateral diplomacy. I started in media at age 16 as a TV presenter and went on to represent Nepal in various international beauty pageants, becoming the first Nepali to ever represent at the Miss Universe stage in 2017. I've always believed that resilience creates opportunities, and this belief drives me to show that with determination, youth from any region can achieve incredible things. From 2020 to 2023, I led the Miss Universe Nepal organization as the national director, making it the most inclusive pageant in the country's history. Despite challenges and feeling boycotted by some professionals, I found my own way. However, greater support would have made my journey even more impactful. This is why I strongly believe in intergenerational cooperation. At a recent IAYSP side event at the ECOSOC Youth Forum, youth delegates emphasized the importance of young people and seasoned policymakers working together to share fresh ideas and experiences for more effective diplomacy. My work in media and pageants helped me use soft diplomacy to promote cross-cultural understanding. I advocated for causes like environmental sustainability and gender equality, partnering with NGOs to amplify youth and women's voices and contribute to international dialogue. We need global standards for youth engagement that are formal, not symbolic, ensuring young voices are included across all contexts. We don't need to wait for permission to make a difference. My journey has been one of self-belief and learning to seek help when needed. From representing Nepal to advocating for youth at the United Nations, I've learned that if you don't get a seat at the table, you bring your own chair. But let's be real. Youth participation needs structure. It can't just be a one-time thing. We need ongoing support, mentorship, regular platforms to engage with global leaders, and indeed financial backing. It's about making sure our impact isn't just for today, but for tomorrow and beyond. We are not talking about being invited as a token participants. We are talking about being key players who drive real change. Inclusivity is non-negotiable. Personally, I do not like the terms Global South, least developed countries, or the outdated third world, because we are all one world. The real power lies in bringing together youth from all corners of the globe, especially those facing the toughest challenges. Inclusivity goes beyond geography. It must account for gender, race, and socioeconomic status. These diverse voices are essential for solving global problems. It's time to make room for everyone at the table. So let's not just sit around talking about what youth could do in multilateral diplomacy. Let's act. Let's build the structures, create the opportunities, and form the partnerships that will make youth participation meaningful, impactful, and enduring. The future of diplomacy depends on us. And trust me, we are ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagma, for sharing your expertise coming from the world of pageantry and also in peace advocacy and how we can all work together for a more inclusive future. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to pass it on to our next esteemed panelist who will be sharing his perspectives from a UN agency. I'd like to pass the floor to Juan Pablo Celis Garcia, who serves as the Program Management Officer at the United Nations Environment Program. Juan, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aishu. It's great to be here and see a lot of familiar faces in the room and also online. It's a pleasure to join you today. Yes, as you've mentioned, I am working for the United Nations Environment Program for a few years. And initially, I started as the youth coordinator for the communication division in UNEP. And I think this topic is very timely, especially at this time. It's that there are so many things happening in the world, and that we come into this topic to bring in a perspective from young people and to understand why is it relevant that young people are involved in multilateralism. So I just want to share a few thoughts. Initially, when you talk about young people engaged in multilateralism, if we focus it on the UN side, I was when I was doing some research about the first times that the UN started doing things about young people and in the forms that they did it, it was somehow about in the 90s when the World Program of Action for Youth was developed by the General Assembly, and then through those years and now until 2024, there's been a change. A slow change of different platforms and engagements, mechanisms that have been created for young people to engage with the United Nations. But it has been a slow process, I must say. And we are still in that process. And a lot of the young people that are actually here today have been involved in that process as well. In the 2000s, when we had the creation of a youth delegates program, where member states were encouraged to bring young delegates to be part of the delegations of member states, to be involved in resolutions, in the decision makings of these resolutions. It was also a very big step for the UN system to bring in young people at the governmental level. But then we had something called the Our Common Agenda, which was developed by civil society in the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. And the Our Common Agenda inspired a lot of the things that we're seeing today of the United Nations being developed as a more open space for young people. So the Our Common Agenda brought the Transforming Education Summit, it brought the Summit of the Future, but it also brought a youth office, which was something that a lot of young people were asking for many, many years. And thanks to that engagement of civil society, and thanks to that advancement and advocacy of youth, we were able to have a common agenda that will guide and bring perspectives and bring action and an establishment of different offices and summits that will include young people. So I have seen in these couple of years how we have had a very much stronger engagement of youth. But let me tell you, I was engaged in the UN. My first ever event when I was with an NGO was in 2015, the adoption of the SDGs, and it was so interesting for me to understand, to see the dynamics of multilateralism. I was a part of some group of young people that were selected to come to the 4th floor of the General Assembly, the balcony, to watch the adoption of the SDGs in 2015. And what really caught my attention was that young people was invited to sit at the 4th floor, at the balcony, but we were not invited to be at the main floor where member states were sitting and where the UN agencies were sitting. And it just felt a bit strange, to be honest with you, because the SDGs, the SDGs have been taken by the young people. We made the SDGs famous. You made the SDGs famous. So it was very interesting for me to see how we were invited to be at the balcony to kind of welcoming, the adoption, and it was also Malala who spoke with the young people in the balcony. But it just felt a bit strange to me, because how come that we were not down there, on the floor with the member states, with the UN agencies, and that really struck something in me to become an advocate and activist of the importance of having young people be in these spaces, but not just as observers, not just in the balcony, but also in the floor with the negotiators, with the leaders of the UN agencies. So through those years after I was part of that moment, it just really taught me how to to find spaces anywhere that we can go and get, speak up and ask young people to be part of it. So we've seen a lot of this change through some of the programs that the UN has offered for young people, like the Department of Global Communication had a youth program that was very engaging for a lot of young people who came from different places. And I remember still that even when I was in high school, I always thought of the UN like a very far away place, like something that I would just watch on TV, like something that it would be so far from me. But then when I started, engaging with the UN, I realized there are spaces, there are ways that you can engage in any form, in any way, even if you're a student in high school, even if you are in university, there's always a way to participate. So, so thanks to that program, I was able to really learn and understand the different ways that we can engage. But I would say throughout these last 10 years, you, the young people, have taken very important topics of the multilateral world, and you have owned them, and you have taken, you have taken ownership, and you have taken action on it. And three of them, I would say, are the main ones. To me, the SDGs. The SDGs wouldn't be as recognized, as famous, and as as well thought if it wasn't for the young people. you took that role of the SDGs and you brought it everywhere. And everywhere you go, there might be somebody that knows what the SDGs are because you have taken them with you. And then the other topic that I would say you have really been the leaders of that multilateral space is climate action. Climate change wouldn't be as well as thought and as mentioned and as as a hot topic if it wasn't for the young people, because you have really taken that agenda as yours. And then the third one I would say is young people participating in the governmental processes. We see how there are a lot of changes in governments, in parliaments, where more young people are taking stage. We see heads of state that are under 35. We see prime ministers under 35. We see young people being at the forefront of leadership in political spaces. So these are just some examples. And just to conclude, I want to say that it's not just only about creating your own spaces, or bringing, new platforms for engagement. I have learned something very important from being now part of a UN agency and being engaged as a young person in a UN agency is that you have to find ways, even if you're not offered that way, but you have to find ways to build bridges with the older generations. And to build bridges with the older generations is trying to put yourself in their shoes, understanding why are they having these thoughts? Why are they thinking that it should be this way and not that way? So you have to, put that, get that, take that role really seriously and just look at why are they doing it and how are they doing it, because you need to build that bridge with them. Even if they don't want to build a bridge with you, you have to find a way to build that bridge, because that's what it taught me when I was in, when I started getting involved in the UN, is that you have to be the one taking that initiative. That's it.
Juan, thank you very much for your also poignant remarks. And again, re-emphasizing the importance of intergenerational collaboration, as you also, Nagma, mentioned, because that is also very essential. Youth participation, but also working with everyone of in the different ages and different backgrounds, as we're all in this work together. So thank you once again for highlighting that. Without, of course, further ado, I'd like to pass the floor to our next panelist, who is Cecilia Schermeister, and serves as a representative to the United Nations for the Baha'i International Community. Cecilia, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone.
Oh.
Hi, everyone. Yes? Maybe. Okay, closer. Great. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. My name is Cecilia Schermeister, and I serve as a representative to United Nations for the Baha'i International Community. Thank you to my fellow moderator and co-panelists that have spoken before me, and to those that will speak after me, thank you as well. So I'll just briefly share a little bit about my work, and then I'll go on to speak more about meaningful youth engagement. So I have been serving as a representative for a little bit under a year, and I follow specifically the areas of youth, social development, and climate change at the UN. So as a representative, I'm following the processes, I'm making connections with the actors in those spaces. So for example, in the youth space, there's the UN Youth Office. Previously, there were youth envoys, and the current UN Youth Office is led, of course, by the Assistant Secretary General, Philippe Follier. In the social development realm, there's the NGO on the Commission of Social Development. Every February, there is the Commission on Social Development, and we always welcome participation in that space, if I could just plug that. And then in the climate change discourse, of course, there's COP for biodiversity, of course, the one in November that will be happening in Azerbaijan. So there's these different areas for engagement, and then being that I'm based in New York, I try to follow the processes, connect with civil society, convene civil society, convene member states, and our office is often seeking to bring in people that have different perspectives, maybe countries that might have disagreements sometimes, and try to offer a space where it can be like a no record, off the record, Chatham House rules, just an honest conversation with people that can remove their institutional hat and speak as human beings. So that's something that I've been exposed to in this first year that I've been serving as a representative. And it has taught me a lot about what it looks like to be a young person engaging in this space. So I think when we talk about participation and meaningful youth engagement, we know that they sound synonymous, but they can be two very different things in reality. So maybe participation is, maybe it's just being there. If you get there already, that's already a huge step and a privilege. But then what does it mean for youth to be meaningfully engaged? So, for example, if youth are often seen in society as recipients of an educational program, as recipients of something that has been provided to them, what would it look like for youth to instead be seen as constructive, substantive experts or contributors in a space? And what would it look like for youth to be listened to genuinely, and for those that have more experience and those that have maybe more wisdom because of the years that they've been in certain decision-making roles, what would it look like for the youth voices to be actively incorporated in the decisions that happen? So I think avoiding or completely eliminating, of course, tokenism is one necessary step in the actual structures and the qualitative, patterns in how the UN works. That's often something that is the first step in a sense. So thinking about not seeing youth as simply a box to be ticked, but rather someone that is genuinely bringing a level of expertise based on the experience that they have. I think also youth have this unique ability to bridge their personal experiences that often take place at the grassroots, and to bridge that in their connections with others in the multilateral space. So just in our day-to-day life, right, we have a sphere of influence that maybe is just a couple of people, but now with social media, with digitalization, it can be a lot of people. And I think youth, whether or not it's at the local, national, or international level, youth have this widened sphere of influence, also maybe a higher fluency in the digitalization, that has taken over the world, in all the social media tools. Youth have this fluency and ability to connect with people, and again, to use social media as a space where disagreements can be bridged and consensus can be found. I think youth also are less attached to the status quo. Youth have a keen sense of justice. They see what is happening in their immediate reality, in their neighborhood, and they're able to discern the needs to read the reality of their neighborhood. What is the reality of my neighbor? What is the reality of my family member, right? And based on that closeness, proximity to whatever their life circumstances are, they're able to identify those challenges, consult with others, and then use that experience and bridge it at whatever level, the local, the national, international. So that's a little bit about the role that youth can have at the grassroots, but then thinking about more the multilateral and like multilateral diplomacy, how do youth engage in that? I think as the potential and the actual work that youth are doing at the grassroots is further recognized, there's a reciprocal need at the level of the United Nations and other multilateral agencies for sort of a loosening in how people view these contributions of youth, as I mentioned before. And that can start with capacity building. It has to start with capacity building. It starts with empowerment of youth. So when a youth is contributing, is a youth allowed to finish their statement, or maybe they're not allowed to, So it even comes to the interpersonal sort of elements that animate any space of dialogue. So there's this loosening, there's the qualitative shifts in the culture of the UN that need to happen for youth's voices to really be heard. And then the quantitative shifts, which are related to access, to funding, to visas for youth from countries around the world where it's harder to come to New York. How do we allow these opportunities to be provided and to be accessible to others? So I think I guess I'll conclude there, and maybe just one more thing that I'll add is that I think as youth, we know that young people have a profound capacity, potential, desire, ability to effect constructive change in their society and to be involved in the transformation of society. And we have to remember that despite the challenges that we see, we're working for a longer term vision and a longer term goal. And every small impact actually has a large magnitude because together we're able to bring something that reaches these higher levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia, for sharing also your very insightful remarks as to how there's like this sort of paradigm shift as well in creating that culture of inclusivity and ensuring that there's that sense of belonging. So thank you very much once again for your remarks. Last but not least, I'd like to pass it to our fourth panelist, who is Amanda Neshiwat, and is the CEO, founder of eVision Green LLC. So Amanda, I pass it over to you to share your insights on policy making at a local level as well. The floor is yours. Yes, apologies.
Thank you. I don't have that much confidence in my voice to project to the back of the room, so thank you for the mic. So my name is Amanda Neshiwat, and I am a UN representative for a foundation called the Foundation for Post-Conflict Development. We are a foundation that works currently with the G7+, which are self-identified countries that are self-identified as post-conflict. I also work as the Director of Sustainability for county government in New Jersey, where I actually grew up. And I have to mention both of these roles because I have been in them now, working for government and with this particular foundation for the past 13 years, and was hired when I was in my early 20s as I was starting my journey as being a youth advocate and someone that was very, very concerned about climate change and wanted to get a lot done, just like everyone here in this room. I was very passionate about trying to be a part of the change of the systems that we were in so that we can actually accomplish great things. And after spending a couple of years in government and within the UN system as a UN representative, I noticed how difficult it was to get things done. And I noticed that the real work that was being done really was on the local level. And I had this very, very unique opportunity to work with a local mayor in New Jersey who gave me the opportunity to work on all different kinds of projects, learn from those projects, the challenges and the successes of local communities in implementing sustainability, and actually being able to go to the UN and talk about it at a more global level or with other young people working around the world on these very, very similar issues. And what I noticed was that even at the global level or the federal level here in the United States, as well as the small local level, governments, sort of don't really know how to solve climate change. And I think that has changed. I think the discussions around climate solutions and how we should partner with the private sector and how we should partner with youth and higher education institutions to get this work done has definitely shifted. I think everyone on this panel, I've known some of you, Juan and Aishu, especially for the past decade, and we've seen those discussions change, where sustainability and climate change has become a much more serious conversation. And but one thing that I see is that governments really don't know how to implement these climate solutions. And so over the past decade, I have been working with local governments and county governments in New Jersey to actually do projects. So we've done things like green infrastructure projects to prove that we can use nature to help with extreme weather events like flooding and erosion. I've worked on community gardens to bring people together because creating community is all about is important to solving sustainability. We've worked on energy efficiency projects where we can actually save thousands of dollars a year by ensuring that we're taking advantage of government incentives to improve the energy usage of our buildings. And last week, we just approved putting 30 electric vehicle charging stations in Hudson County for public and also fleet use for the public. And the reason why I mention these projects is because, if initially what I wanted to do was prove that it can be done. And so we've proved it. Now people can point at those projects and say, these are projects that can be done. It's saving communities money. It's improving the lives of people. It's reducing the emissions in our atmosphere. But most importantly, we are leading by example. So that's really important to me, to prove that things are possible. And I think that a lot of young people are doing that as well. Another challenge that I see that is happening even on the federal level in the United States is that people are really afraid of change. I'm not sure if you've experienced that in, maybe the campuses that you're working on or the offices that you're working in. And I think that being a young person is an interesting role in this, because what you're doing is you're coming in and you're giving your vision for the world. And I think it's, because we have a very, very different perspective. I love that you said that we don't really attach ourselves to the status quo. And I love that, because I think that's the reason why young people are very successful in getting, the international community to really understand what's at stake, but also what our vision is. And it's because we have not really subscribed to the social conditioning. I mean, I've been told, since my early 20s, that's not something that we do, or that's never been done before. And I don't know if anyone's ever heard those things before. Maybe raise your hand. We don't do things like that here, or we don't know how to do this. And I think that that's because we haven't been told. That's because we're not falling into that social conditioning. And I just think that that's a really important piece of this. And that's kind of my takeaway message here, is that, we do not accept that it can't be done. We know that it can be. And if people created the problems that we're facing now, people can actually create the solutions as well. And so what I want to say is just continue to lead by example, continue to lead, authentically who you are. And because the world is changing, it's always changing, but we can change it for the better with our small actions that we do in our local communities. So thank you.
Thank you, Chamanda, for highlighting that every action, however, whatever it may be, makes a difference. So thank you again for sharing your insights as well. And now we'd like to move on to the next segment of our panel to hear from the audience, both in person and online. If you have any questions or comments for our esteemed panelists. Any questions or comments or any advice? Yes, we have the young lady that's in the very nice burgundy blazer, salmon colored, yes. I'd kindly like to request, yes, the staff to pass the microphone to our in-person participant. Thank you. And to our viewers online, please feel free to share your comments or questions in the chat box. So thank you very much.
Okay, hi. My name is Nesat, and I'm doing contract plans for and I live in Texas, but I'm originally from the Republic of Congo. So I remember the fact that you mentioned to build bridges with, the people that were before, elderly, that have more experience. So what would be the solution? What would be your suggestion? Because I know she also mentioned about we never done that. Your pieces, and we have a lot of people that work there, and that have been working there for 50 years, 80 years. That's really, it's hard for them to make those changes. But at the same time, you say to build that bridges with them. So how do you think would be the best way to communicate with them, because there is that difference of ages, and backgrounds? Do you have a solution or a suggestion that you can give, to the audience on how that can be, can be helped, how can it
Absolutely. Thank you. So maybe what we'll do is we'll take 3 questions and then have the panelists share the responses, and then also referring to our online participants as well. So yes, the next person, I believe, Yes, thank you. Yes, please. The floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Talia. I'm from California and I'm a senior at Celis University. I am curious how, so we've heard a lot about sustainable development goals, we've made them famous, and as a student we talk about them a lot, but we never hear about the progress of these sustainable development goals. When are they being enacted? What's happening with them? What's the discussion right now versus the discussion when they were first introduced? And I'm curious, like, if there's any methods for students to learn about the progress of sustainable development goals, other than just what they are and why they exist. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And yes, the floor is yours. Thank you.
My name is Maria Musani, and I'm from Nesat. So I have more interest in what she made mention of. We are the ones that are talking about sustainable development, but most credit goes to the United Nations. And I'm sure everyone here knows that we're not being given the resources to implement these projects. We have the G17 where I serve as the president of my country. The 17 sustainable development goals go to each university, sensitizing them about these goals and why we should actualize them. But where are the resources? We use our own money. We're the ones going to lobby to the government officials. Sometimes you go and they think you're there to just get the money and not. But sometimes we also use our manpower, go to our community people, sensitize them, oh, United Nations is not giving us, they're not facilitating us enough for us to be able to implement this goal. What are we really running towards? 2030, what's going to happen in 2030? We're talking about it, but what really are we trying to do? Where are the funds? What are they doing to facilitate up the youth? We need to talk about this, and maybe the less credit should be going to them and focus on us, the youth, because we are the ones doing the work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. In-person audience members for your questions. We will get back to you, sir. Apologies, we would be delighted to hear from you. I'd like to pass the floor to our panelists. Anybody would like to respond to the three questions? The questions or of their choice, yes. Would you like to, yes, the floor is yours now.
Hi, I'd like to share my perspectives on the intergenerational cohesion that we are heavily talking about these days. So in my own experience, I did have a lot of challenge to collaborate and work with older people or older professionals. But that was not the end for me. I found other like-minded people who were much older than me who came to support as well. So if there's one person who is saying, I don't want to support you, don't wait for him or her. Just find another one. Simple as it is. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks so much for the questions. I was taking notes on my phone, so I wanted to make sure I answered all of it. So on the question of intergenerational, I'll give you my personal experience. So I've started the journey about 10 years ago as an advocate, and I was 21. Now I'm 31. I've been told I still look much younger than that, hopefully. but something that I have noticed is that three main things that we can do to build those bridges. And the first one is you have to find a way to invite that older generation to your spaces. So I did that just today, for instance. Who spoke at the beginning, Ms. Jody Martin Phillips, she's actually my boss. So I invited her to come to this conference because I have seen the power of what these conferences bring from young people. And I thought it was really important for a senior leader like her to come and listen in and also participate and engage with you. So when you invite them to your spaces, it could be a roundtable, it could be a gathering in someone's house. It could be, any space that you have where young people are gathered. Invite a few or many of these senior leaders to come and participate, to listen in, to share perspectives and so on. The second point would be reach out to those senior leaders that you might not think they will probably not answer your email or probably not, or ignore you. Try it. Try to reach out to them and do it with confidence, because confidence could get you to many places. And it's important that when you come up to them and you talk with them, you do it with confidence. But that comes with my third point, and is that you have to always be respectful. And I feel that this is something that sometimes even it happens with me because I'm very eager about something, I'm very passionate about a topic. But when I'm very passionate, it could also come out as rude in a way. And the thing, and it happens with other generations that they might not take that as being empathetic. And you have to always come with kindness. You have to also be strategic, and you have to get your point across. But we need to always be respectful. And I feel like that is an aspect that we're missing sometimes, because when we come too strong about something, yes, you're passionate about it, but there is a way that you can get your message across to other generations. At the point of the UN supporting on resources, the UN's budget, I'm not sure if you're aware, is way less than the budget of the NYPD, for instance. The UN has actually very little resources compared to many other organizations or companies around the world. And it might come to you as a shock, because I realized that also when I joined the UN as a staff member, is that there's very little resources that are given to the organization. And because those resources are defined by the member states, the governments who are members of the United Nations. So, but there are other ways that you could get to resources. And that is a challenge that we've struggled. Everyone that has been a youth advocate or has worked for an NGO, you probably are struggling that every day, is to find resources. But one strategy I would say is that transforming this message to the private sector, to the companies or to entities who have actually resources, and transforming that message to a way that it is attractive to companies or to institutions that could support your work, can make a big difference. So building those pitch to be able to bring in what the work that you do and how is it important to contribute to someone else's perspective could also bring resources from other places. But just want to bring that reality check that the UN doesn't have the resources you think it does. And I tell you from a perspective of someone who was outside and now is inside. So just to bring that into point. Sorry, I probably went over time.
So I'll also try to respond to all three of the points. Thank you so much for these questions. In regards to the first one about intergenerational collaboration and how to bridge that, I love that you asked that, because I feel like I think about that every single day in this space. So I think maybe some points that I would highlight are that maybe when we're thinking about intergenerational collaboration, again, it's this idea of like, how are people interacting? How are we viewing each other? How do we respond to each other? How do we value each other's input? I was at the Global People's Assembly session that was happening a couple of days ago in the Church Center, and someone from the NGO Committee on Aging was speaking, and there was a bit of a dialogue with the question and answer section, and there was a little bit of the sentiment being expressed that, people that are older, they had certain circumstances that were in their life, and they had to make a choice as to how to respond. We as young people, if we were put in those exact same circumstances, maybe without the knowledge that society has accumulated today, how would we respond? That was a question that was posed. And it was very interesting, because I think when we are engaging with people of different generations, there's a lot of opportunity for learning on both sides. There's a lot of opportunity for growth. There's, as I mentioned before, the digital skills that young people have is something that the older generations might benefit from. And of course, those that have years of experience also have a reservoir of knowledge that we can benefit from. But in that, it requires, I think, a sense of humility on both sides to learn, having a posture of learning, approaching a space willing to hear from another person. And I think also, maybe when we, in any space, maybe we could benefit from expanding our sense of identity. Like me as a young person, I might have certain concerns and needs that I want to bring to the table. But if I think more and expand that sense of identity to a collective, then maybe I would incorporate the needs of an older person as my own needs, and maybe they would also incorporate the needs of a younger person as their own needs, even if they aren't a younger person, right? So that's a bigger shift, but planting the seeds of that could be helpful. I don't want to take too much time. Should I pass it on?
Oppose, we do have a few.
Let's do it. Yeah.
But
please.
thank you. You're.
Of course. Of course.
Thank you, Shapanis, for first round of questions. And of course, as we did indeed promise earlier, we would like to hear from our participants online. And in the interest of time, if I may have permission of the panelists to condense the 2 questions and to kindly provide your interventions. Our first question comes from Sumaika Rahman. Thank you very much for your question. Her question is, in countries where cultural norms are deeply rooted, what approaches can young people take to introduce progressive changes without facing significant backlash from older people? That is our first question. And then our second question, which apologies for being unable to provide the correct attribution, but we thank you for your question. How can young people effectively contribute to multilateral diplomacy and shape the field? So I'd like to pose those 2 questions to our esteemed panelists, and then we will go to one more round of in-person questions just to conclude our discussion, and then we shall proceed further. So any quick comments? I know I'd like to pass the floor to Amanda first. Yes.
Okay, sure. So I have always been sort of a very different government employee for a long time. I'm very focused on sustainability, and I think that making it very clear what I would like to do in government and with the teams that I work in has been really very helpful for me. What I mean by that is, I work with a lot of older people, actually, and because government, is, it's an old institution, obviously, but I work with people that are 20, 30 years older than me and always have been. I've always kind of been the younger woman in the room in government. But what I found is that people really wanted to hear what I had to say. Actually, people were very welcoming to, have me come to their meetings. They were very curious about my perspective on, different things, different projects that we were doing. And so I think that just having the confidence of being able to speak up about, your perspective or how you would do things differently, but also listening to the institutional knowledge that's already there with, people that are older than us, to see and figure out why things didn't work, and then to kind of go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, actually, we could do things a little bit differently. Let me see how I can. And having the community of young people with you, mentors with you, is so important. It's important for me too. Calling my young colleagues, calling on mentors of mine, older people that are very interested in mentoring me, was very important to me early on in my career to sort of get a perspective on how I can move forward with the projects that I really wanted to do. So I just wanted to give that away. And then also there was a question from the woman from Tufts about the SDG reporting. And that's a really important question because I think earlier this year, they actually did come out with a report on the latest on the SDGs and where we are with them. And I believe that it's on the SDG website. So I just wanted to point you in that direction. Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. And
Okay.
yes. Did you also have any other additional points to any of your panelists?
I could add something on the culturally rooted part, because I too come from Nepal. It's very culturally rich at various levels in my life, especially when participating in a beauty pageant. It was such a shift in my family. To wear a bikini on an international stage was a taboo. So it was very difficult for me to convince my father, especially. But then how I convinced him was because I think one word would be trust. I made him believe that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was instead doing something for the development of my country or to represent my country. And another one would be also action speaks louder than words is something that I've always believed in. I showed him through my participation what the country could achieve. I did it, I made it happen. So now he's okay with it. But it was very challenging for me when I started off in modeling and in beauty pageants, because as a culturally rooted country, it was very challenging for us to accept it. I also wanted to add in different international pageants, some of the countries, they don't allow wearing bikinis for the swimsuit round. So for that particular round, you can wear a full body suit and still walk on the international stage. So that is inclusivity, which is very prevalent in pageants these days. Thank you.
And I believe we are unfortunately running out of time. Apologies. I know we do have some more questions, but please feel free to connect with the panelists afterwards. And to all of our viewers joining online, thank you very much for your comments and questions. Please feel free to continue to do so online, and we will be happy to respond to all of you. I'd like to thank all the panelists for their very insightful and very meaningful perspectives on today's discussion, and coming from a variety of angles on how youth can effectively contribute to the world of multilateral diplomacy. And one of the cornerstone beliefs of the International Youth Conference platform is that, you know, you are actually part of the United Nations. It's actually how this conference is kind of showing that it's bringing it all to you and how you can make change in your local community. So we commend you on all your efforts, and may you continue to make an impact on society. I'd like to thank all our panelists and the organizers and the International Youth Conference Committee for organizing this event. Thank you very much to everyone joining us in person or online. Join us for the next session on UN's Youth, Peace and Security Agenda shortly. Thank you very much.